How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Top Buy, Top Sell here in the A1 Edge Finder, where we're going over our number one buy setup and our number one sell setup of the day. Now, normally when we do these videos, we take a look at two things before we get started. And on Wednesday, when I put one of these out, we took a look at COT data and retail positioning. Now, COT data does update on Fridays, but it always updates on Friday afternoon. So we don't have the new COT data quite yet. We will have that updated in the Edge Finder later on today. So instead, we're going to take a look at the put call ratio as well as the AAII investor sentiment survey. We're going to start off today with the put call ratio, which is a pretty interesting little chart here. You can actually see the overall ratio of how many puts compared to how many calls there are on the market right now. And if you're unfamiliar with what puts and calls are, to simplify it, basically a put is a bearish bet and a call is a bullish bet, which means that if you are putting puts on the market, you think that the market is bearish right now. You think overall the stock market, S&P 500, is in a bearish sentiment area, is going to move lower. And if you're putting calls on the market, then you think that the stock market is bullish and that the market is going to be positive and be making gains, so on and so forth. So taking a look at the put call ratio chart here, we can see that for most of the month of June, the market sentiment overall was very bullish. We see this white line consistently. It is moving up and down, but it's constantly below this little neutral line right here and in the blue zone, which is actually going to be our bullish sentiment area. It wasn't until late on in July that we started peaking up into the bearish sentiment area, and then early on in August, on August 2nd actually, which was 1 week ago today, we jumped way up into bearish sentiment area. And then on Monday, if you've been keeping up with the markets and everything going on this week, this has been one of the most volatile weeks in market history. If you take a look at the VIX, if you go all the way back, you can see the 2008 housing crisis was a very volatile week. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a lot of volatility. And then outside of those two things, this week, because of what many people believe was because of some stuff going on with the Bank of Japan, was a huge volatile week, especially on Monday. We have since kind of bounced back from there and figured some things out, but Monday especially was a huge sell-off day, and market sentiment was incredibly bearish, and we haven't poked down into bullish sentiment yet, quite yet. We are still hovering in the bearish sentiment area. So another cool thing about the put call ratio is that you can actually see it day by day. So you'll notice as I kind of scroll across here, we see every single day what the put call ratio is putting out. So for the past 7 days in a row, we have had bearish sentiment on the market, and that'll likely continue for a little bit longer until we see some of those gains get back from all that sell-off that we had on Monday. But yeah, that was a quick look at put call ratio. Now we're going to move on to AAII Investor Sentiment Survey, which is a survey done by the American Association of Individual Investors that asks investors every single week whether they have a bullish, bearish, or neutral outlook on the market over the next 6 months. As you can see up top, we're looking at the S&P 500. You can actually switch it to any of these different assets that we're tracking in the Edge Finder, but I'm going to keep it on the S&P because it's similar to what we were looking at in the put call ratio. And the S&P 500 is just kind of like a stock market staple. So, you know, if the S&P 500 is doing well, more often than not, the overall market is doing well, and vice versa. If the S&P 500 is not doing well, more often than not, the overall market isn't doing well. So it's just kind of an easy thing to take a look at, especially when we're talking about future market projections. So we can see week by week, going all the way back to April 29th to May 5th. That is the first week that we have listed here, all the way up to present week, August 5th to August 11th. What do these individual investors believe the market is, where do they believe the market is heading? And we can see overall right now that individual investors are still favored bullish on the market, even though it is pretty close. We see overall 40.5% are bullish right now, 22% have neutral sentiment, and 37.5% have a bearish outlook. But we can see that number actually grew significantly from last week, over 12%. So last week we saw 25.2% of investors had a bearish outlook on the market. Again, over the next 6 months, and then that jumped way up to 37.5 at the start of this week, which is a huge move, bigger than a lot that we've seen in the past weeks. We see, kind of hovering around the same area, 22%, 28%, 26, 21, 23. Nothing too crazy there, and then kind of a big move, 23 to 31%, and then back down to 25, but then a big jump all the way up to 37%. And this is the most bearish that they've been on the market in a long time. If we look, we can look all the way back to April, the end of April, and they were at 32.5%, but even higher than that now, it's sitting at 37.5%. So here at the end of the week, overall, market sentiment seems to be mostly bearish from the AAII investor sentiment survey, as well as the put call ratio. So we'll see if that continues into next week as well. But with that out of the way, let's go dive into top setups. Did you know that we have 100% free trading tools and data available for you on our website, a1trading.com, right now? We have free courses for you to browse. You can also check out things like retail sentiment and free articles from our analyst Frank that include things like Edgefinder screenshots and trade setups. You can find all of this and so much more for free right now on our website, a1trading.com. I'm going to remove any neutral biases that we have, and let's take a look at our full list of bullish and bearish biases. Right now, we only have one very bearish bias. It's EUR CAD with a score of +9, but we have a lot of bullish biases to go along with that. A few bearish biases here as well, and two very bearish biases. We see CAD yen and USD yen, or USD JPY. So two Canadian dollar pairs at our very bullish and very bearish biases. So we're definitely going to be taking a look at both of those because they are our highest scores. And we'll start off like we normally do by taking a look at the bullish one first. So let's take a look at EUR CAD. And here we are, EUR CAD, very bullish bias, score of +9. COT data is a score of 0, and retail sentiment a score of +1. Taking a look at that COT data, we see that the euro overall is pretty much 50-50 when it comes to long and short positioning. 52% long, 47% short. It's way too close to call it one way or the other. But the Canadian dollar, on the other hand, 90.26% short on the Canadian dollar. That is incredibly short sentiment coming from COT traders when it comes to the Canadian dollar. And we actually see that both weekly changes were negative. So last week, the Canadian dollar was the most short asset, and this week it got even more short, sitting again currently at 90.26%. Right now, retail traders are favored short on EUR CAD overall. 66% of them are shorting it, and that is giving us our +1 score. Seasonality, we see that over the last 10 years, averaged together, typically in the month of August, EUR CAD tends to trade higher. And speaking of trading higher, our trend reading right now is a score of +2. GDP and manufacturing PMI both have scores of +2. Services PMI is a score of -1. Retail sales, a 0 or neutral score. Inflation and the employment change, both scores of +2. The unemployment rate and interest rate scores of -1. So overall, fundamentally speaking, it's kind of mixed. It's leaning slightly bullish, but we do definitely see some red boxes and some neutral boxes here as well. But taking a look at our economic data, we see GDP A here. That is going to be the euro because it's listed first, and GDP B is going to be the Canadian dollar because it's listed second. And we see that overall the euro beat GDP forecast, whereas Canada missed GDP forecast. Manufacturing PMI, we see the same thing, a beat beat for the euro and a miss for Canada. But services PMI, we see that both the euro and Canada met expectations, and when it comes to retail sales, both the euro and Canada missed expectations. CPI in Europe, we see CPIA here came out higher than forecasted at 2.4%, but came out at 2.6%. We see the opposite in Canada, forecasted at 2.9%, but actually came out at 2.7%. The employment change in Europe came out exactly as forecasted, 0.3%, came out at 0.3%. And we see the same thing in Canada as well. The unemployment rate was forecasted, both were forecasted at 6.4%, but only the euro area ticked higher, up to 6.5%. So there we go. There is all the data and numbers backing up that very bullish bias score of +9. Now we're going to go to our most bearish pair of the day. It's CAD JPY with that very bearish bias score of -11. COT data is a score of -2, and retail sentiment is a 0 score. We already took a look at COT data when it came to Canada. It's very, very, very short at 90%, and the Japanese yen is short as well at 68%. However, the weekly change for Canada was negative, whereas the weekly change for the Japanese yen was positive. Overall, the Japanese yen has been in our bottom 3 in terms of COT data for quite some time, but this week it actually jumped out of the bottom 3. It is the 4th most shorted asset when it comes to COT traders, but no longer in the bottom 3 after a very positive week. Still overall short though. Retail traders right now are basically 50-50. We see 53% long, 47% short, so it's really too close to call there. Seasonality over the last 10 years averaged together, we see that in the month of August, historically speaking, CAD JPY tends to trade lower. We have a trend reading score of -1, and we have a GDP score of -1. Manufacturing services PMIs are both neutral. Retail sales score of -2, inflation -1, employment change -2, unemployment rate -1, and interest rates 0. Taking a look at our economic data, we see that Canada again missed GDP expectations, but the Japanese yen met. Both missed manufacturing PMI expectations. Canada met services PMI expectations, but Japan beat them. And retail sales, we see a miss for Canada and a beat for Japan. CPI again in Canada, 2.9% was the forecast. It came out lower at 2.7%, and in Japan it met exactly at 2.8%. The employment change in Canada came out as forecasted, but there was forecasted no change in Japan, but came out at 0.37%. The unemployment rate stayed the same in Canada at 6.4%, but ticked a little bit lower in Japan, forecasted at 2.6%, but actually came out at 2.5%. So there we go. There's all the data and numbers backing up that -11 very bearish bias on CAD yen. I want to say really quickly that if you are interested in the Edge Finder, and if you are interested in getting more in depth in all of this fundamental data that we have listed here, we have all of these tabs here that go much more in depth into all of the fundamental data. You can see all of the actual numbers, previous data that goes back weeks, months, years. We have all of that stuff listed here in the Edge Finder in all of these super useful, super detailed tabs. We just keep it very simple in the actual scanner pages and let you know if it met, missed, or beat expectations. Again, just to kind of make it a little bit more simple, a little bit easier to understand. But we do have all of that data listed here in all of these tabs here for you to take a look at if you would like. But that's going to do it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you want the Edge Finder for yourself, you can find it in the links down in the description below or on our website, a1trading.com, and you can use promo code A1YT at checkout for a discount on the Edge Finder. Did you know we do a live trading show Monday through Friday with guests from all over the world? To get notified when we go live, click the bell button next to the subscribe button, or check in at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We have helpful, free content in the description below and on our website, a1trading.com. Thanks for watching today's video, and we'll see you tomorrow.